What's up, everyone, and welcome to Scourge of War Waterloo, episode 15. It's been a while since we've done a divisional scenario. I know I had kind of interrupted that because I wanted to go back and redo the Brigade series to kind of bring it in line with how I had been doing the divisional scenarios. And that's all done, and I'm happy with the way it came out. And now the whole series has sort of a consistency to it. Um, so yeah, now we're going to get back to going through the rest of the divisional scenarios. Before we get into the video, I want to touch on something briefly. As I mentioned in episode one, long before I ever started making this series, I've been playing this game for a long time, pretty much since it came out, and I've beaten every scenario in the game, as I've said before. Um, And some of those scenarios are what they call carryover scenarios or unlockable scenarios. And you basically have to play, one scenario to unlock another scenario. Um, you have to play uh, Derlan's attack to unlock the Lai Hassan scenario. You have to play Gerard's Corps attack on Ligny to unlock the Imperial Guard attack on Ligny, and so forth. And there's a few of those in the game. You have to play the divisional Dutch defense of Wellington's line as they defend against the Imperial Guard in order to unlock, La Garde Recul. So there's a couple of scenarios where they start off locked, and you have to play another scenario in order to unlock it. Now, these some of these scenarios are just unlockable, and they're the same no matter what. If you play Gerard's attack on Ligny, you're just going to unlock the Imperial Guard attack on Ligny, but nothing you do in the Gerard's Corps scenario has any impact on the Imperial Guard scenario. You just have to beat that one to unlock it. But you know, none of the casualties carry over. Nothing carries over. It's just a regular scenario, and you just have to unlock it. Some scenarios have what they call carryover losses, meaning you play either the same troops or a part of the same troops in the unlockable scenario that you played in the previous scenario. And so the amount of losses you inflict on the enemy and the amount of losses you take can have an impact on the unlockable scenario. And the best example of this is when playing Derlan's attack, the French Corps scenario. If you beat it, if you get a major victory, it unlocks the Lai Hassan Brigade scenario, which is how I did it. Now, recently, I've learned that I guess there's actually a way to hack into the scenario and actually unlock these scenarios without actually playing the scenario that you have to play to unlock it. In other words, you could unlock Lai Hassan and play the scenario even if you hadn't played Derlan's attack yet. Some of the scenarios, it won't matter how you unlock it. It won't matter if you played Gerard's Corps to unlock the Imperial Guard attack on Ligny, and it won't matter if you hack into the scenario to unlock the Imperial Guard attack. It's a standalone scenario either way, so it wouldn't matter how you did it. Uh, the Lai Hassan scenario, the Brigade scenario, is a bit of a different story because um, both the Brigade you play in Lai Hassan is part of Derlan's Corps. So you play them in Derlan's attack. So in that scenario, the casualties you take and the casualties you inflict on the enemy can have a drastic effect on what Lai Hassan ends up being when you unlock it. And basically, I figured this out from talking to one of my subscribers who actually did this. He went into the scenario code, I guess, and edited it or changed. I don't actually know what he did. I did kind of look at it, how he did it. It does look pretty easy to do, but I didn't really delve into it. But it looks pretty easy to do, and he basically unlocked the scenario, the Lai Hassan scenario, and he hasn't played Derlan's attack yet. He just unlocked the scenario by editing the, I guess, the code of that scenario or whatever. Um, and we found that when he tried to play that scenario following my series, that there were a lot of discrepancies in the scenario. And after some trial and error, what we ended up figuring out is that the reason his scenario was different than mine was that he had unlocked it without playing Derlan's attack, while I unlocked it by playing Derlan's attack. So he ended up with a completely different situation at the start of the scenario than I do at the start of my Lai Hassan scenario, basically because we unlocked it in two completely different ways. And the carryover effects from Derlan's attack, which is a core scenario, by the way, if I haven't mentioned that. We haven't covered it yet. So it's a little weird that it would take playing a core scenario to unlock a brigade scenario, but nevertheless, that's the way it is. So we haven't covered Derlan's attack yet in the series. Um, and basically what we found was the situation was completely different. In my scenario, when I played Derlan's attack, I inflicted severe losses on the allies around Lai Hassan. I captured Lai Hassan, and basically crippled the forces there. So they took a lot of losses that carried over to the Lai Hassan brigade scenario. So, uh, in my version of Lai Hassan, it happens after I've played Derlan's attack, and it's a completely different situation. The fort is unoccupied. The Allied forces are severely reduced in strength, and it just makes the scenario so much easier. It's probably one of the reasons I called it one of the easiest scenarios in the game, because I had so crippled the forces defending Lai Hassan in Derlan's attack that I just wasn't facing that much. And that ended up not being the case for him because he didn't have any of the carryover effects from Derlan's attack and just unlocked the scenario. And he was facing, the fort was occupied. It was much more heavily defended than it is in my version. Because none of those effects carried over. So, long story short, to any new player, if you want to follow this video series and have it be accurate, I'm advising against going into the scenario codes and unlocking the scenarios without playing the scenarios that actually unlock those scenarios. If you do, um, then on a lot of certain scenarios anyway, we don't know exactly how many of these affect yet, but certainly Lai Hassan will be very different than what it looks like in my video, and pretty much none of what I do or try to show you in that video, uh, either that or the Lai Hassan revisited video I did, where I actually found a better way to do it. None of that will apply if you go ahead and unlock the scenario. Um, by just editing the scenario so that it's playable. So if you want to follow the series, obviously you start out playing the Brigade series. Yeah, Lai Hassan is going to be locked. Lagarde Recul is going to be locked. You won't be able to play those until later on when we cover the scenarios that actually unlock those scenarios, and then you can go back and play those scenarios. So that's what I advise doing if you want to follow the series. If you want to unlock them that way, just going into the scenario files and editing it or whatever it is you have to do to unlock the scenarios. Obviously, you can, but just realize that some of my videos then won't apply to your playthroughs because the situation you're going to start off in is going to be completely different. And Lai Hassan is so far the most egregious example of that, where it was just a totally different situation than the one um, that I had in my videos, because I played that scenario after obviously unlocking it by playing Derlan's attack. which has a lot of carryover effects. Like I said, they're not all like that. Some of them are just unlockable scenarios where nothing you do in the previous scenario really has any effect on the scenario itself. You simply just have to play that scenario to unlock the other scenario. And the two Ligny scenarios I mentioned are pretty much like that. But yeah, just something to be aware of. If you want to follow the series, I advise against editing the scenario files to unlock the locked scenarios, basically, and just wait till we get to the scenarios that actually unlock those scenarios, and then you can go back and play them. All right, so now that that's over with, let's start the video here, and we're gonna do a little mini series here today, and we're gonna the next couple of videos we're going to be focusing on the fighting around Plancenoit village, which was on the French right flank, and it became the focus of the fighting between the Prussians who were arriving on the field from Wavre and the French who were trying to keep them in check by stopping them around Plancenoit village long enough for Napoleon to finish Wellington off. And that was the plan anyway. So in this episode, we're going to take a look at basically the first kind of Prussian thrust towards Plancenoit village. It starts off after they've pushed back the 6th Corps, and the 6th Corps has withdrawn basically into a line kind of around Plancenoit village. And our job is to take it, basically. It's the last defensive position on the right flank of the French army, and we have to take and hold the village of Plancenoit. An interesting thing about this scenario, it's one of the few scenarios in the game where taking the objective is not really necessary. You can see we need 1,000 points for a major victory. And honestly, this is one of the few scenarios in the game you can actually win by combat alone. I've played the scenario many times where I did not capture the objective and still won the scenario. It's very possible to get over 1,000 points just through combat alone. And I do capture it in this playthrough at the end of the scenario with like 5 minutes remaining or whatever. I don't even really, get that much from it. And when I did capture it, I already had enough points for a major victory. So it says you were ordered to attack and occupy Plancenoit village, and basically the church right there with the French flag above it is the objective. But like I said, it's not critical to capture it. The real critical thing here is to use this river here as a barrier to keep these French forces on the other side of it from really getting involved in the battle and being able to, kind of defend the church. The other thing is you can see there's a lot of French artillery up on the hill. And it's pretty close enough that if we start moving towards that church, we're going to catch some hell from it. So the first thing I'm going to do here is take my forward regiment, which I guess is broken up here into about 3 battalions, and I'm going to deploy them along the line of the river, basically to block the French advance. As you can see, they're already moving forward towards the creek there, and I'm basically going to go and block them off from kind of getting involved in the battle. You can see that, it's 3 battalions of French moving towards us, and we're going to go and just kind of line up along the river here and sort of stop them from crossing it. The other thing we have to do is take care of this French artillery that's up on the hill here. And happily for us, we have 2 little cavalry squadrons as part of our division here. This is one of the first times where we've actually gotten to use cavalry and had control over it since we've started this series. And that cavalry is going to pay, there they are right there, 2 little squadrons, and it's going to pay huge dividends because we are going to use that cavalry to capture that artillery. As you can see, that's all it is artillery. It's not defended at all. There's two little infantry battalions off to the right there, but we're going to capture these artillery batteries pretty much before they know what's up. I'm also going to bring my guns forward to start just basically challenging the French artillery that's up there. And once we get the artillery, then I'll start focusing on the church. The church is a pretty good defensive position, and the French have at least 2 battalions in there. So it does take a while to run them off, if you're going to run them off at all. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes they stay in there the whole time, and you can't run them off. But as I said, this is one of the few scenarios where capturing the objective is not critical. Most times you can beat the scenario without capturing the objective, just by the amount of casualties you're going to inflict. So long as you set yourself up right. And one of the biggest keys is to get this artillery. So you see it's 2 8-gun batteries, and we're going to start moving the cavalry kind of right up to them. And as soon as we get close, we're just going to charge and take every gun. Now, with cavalry, I know you guys have seen me capture artillery with infantry before. And when you capture artillery with infantry, you basically end up crewing the batteries and turning them into, artillery for your side. That doesn't happen with cavalry. With cavalry, they just surrender and the gun basically just disappears. So we're not going to be able to turn these guns into French artillery because we're going to be using cavalry to capture them. That's not a big deal, though. We don't really need artillery in this scenario. This is much more of an infantry fight than it is anything else. And we're really just using our cavalry to get, basically to get those guns out of there. And that's kind of the only purpose we're going to use them for. And then just to keep the 2 infantry battalions on the right there from, basically causing a problem, we can just kind of leave the cavalry kind of out there just to keep them from advancing. So as you can see, I've got the first part done. I have my first regiment. I have them, all 3 battalions deployed kind of along the creek there on the bank, and they're keeping the French kind of pinned up in there. Some of the French battalions have made it across the river, but they're small battalions compared to mine, and we're just going to shoot them up and they're going to withdraw, and then we will advance and kind of occupy that path that's running down there. And the whole point of that is that those 3 battalions are basically screening the rest of my division's advance, so that we can get to the church and start shooting them up. Now, I do make a few blunders in this scenario, and nothing critical, but I do some stupid things that looking back, I was like, why did I do that? But like I said in another video, I don't necessarily mind showing you guys some mistakes. It's nobody's perfect. You're gonna make mistakes. Even me, I've been playing this game for a long time and I still make them. And the important thing is really to show kind of how I bounce back from the mistakes, as opposed to trying to not make any to begin with and showing you some polished, picture perfect playthrough. Sometimes, you might learn more by seeing me, fumble the ball and then, still being able to score the touchdown, so to speak, as opposed to just having a clean run to the end zone. So, yeah, there's a few blunders I make. But the main thing here with this scenario, go block the river to cut the French off from being able to cross it. Move your artillery forward to contest the French artillery and basically get them involved in artillery duel. And send this cavalry forward to take the guns, because it's real easy to do. I do it every single time. These guns are not defended by anything, and that's just never a good idea. You can't just leave artillery out there in a forward position and nobody guarding them. So I took my first regiment and I took those 3 battalions to block the creek. I took my second regiment and I'm moving them up to start shooting at the church and some of the battalions on either side of the church. And my 3rd regiment, I'm actually holding in reserve right now. I'm not, I'm never sure what it is I'm going to do with them, whether I need to reinforce the church, reinforce the creek, or maybe circle around the church and start to try to surround it. So we've driven back the first kind of French move towards the creek there. A few more battalions are coming up. Now, this unit right here is getting some canister fire poured into them, but I'm going to leave them there because I got the cavalry coming up, and we're going to take these guns real quick. So here they come. They're not even really being fired on. They're just running right up to him here. And there they go, charging away. Go, little cavalry squadrons. Too little, too late. The guns are trying to pack up, but unfortunately, they let the cavalry get too close. And we're just going to start taking guns here. And as you see, they'll just disappear. There they go, one by one. Now, they're not obviously vanishing, but they're essentially captured and removed from play, so to speak. And we are just cruising right through this battery. And again, I'm just mashing the hell out of the charge button to just keep the charges going without reforming. And this is going to tucker my cavalry out pretty good, doing all this charging. But as soon as they're done taking all the guns here, we will pull them back to safety and let them recuperate. Cavalry is powerful but fragile, so after a charge like this, you really want to kind of pull them out and pull them back to give them a chance to rest and get their morale and their fatigue back. Think of it as like, in board game terms, your cavalry would be blown after a charge like this. So we've taken every single gun, and I accidentally keep clicking, and I was going to charge the infantry, but if that ever happens, just click the retreat button, and you'll basically cancel your charge, which is what I just did there. So we've run off the 1st battalion that was defending the church, and now I'm going to kind of slip this battalion around to the side of the church here, so we're bringing fire from multiple angles at the church. As I've mentioned before, the more firepower you can bring to multiple sides of a defensive, a fortified position like this, the better chance you have of shooting them out quicker. It doesn't always happen in this case. This church is something else in terms of being a defensive position. So, like I said, if you don't capture the church, in this particular scenario, it's not the end of the world. You can actually still beat this scenario without capturing the objective. And in fact, even though I did capture the objective at the end of the scenario, by the time I did, I already had enough points for a major victory. So it was just like I was just doing it because I could. So yeah, the main points in this scenario are you basically have 3 regiments with 3 battalions each. Prussian organization is a little different. Technically, this is called a brigade, and not a division. I don't think the Prussian army actually used a division in their organization. I think they were, a corps. And the Corps had various numbers of brigades in the Corps, but it wasn't organized in divisions the way the French army was. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Prussian organization, but yeah, technically this is called a brigade, but it essentially plays like a division. Instead of your brigades constituting, 1 or 2 regiments with battalions like in the French army. Here we have a brigade with multiple regiments and, like 3 battalions per regiment. So you're handling the same amount of units as if it was a division, but it's just not organized that way. So we have basically our brigade commander is effectively a division commander, and then instead of brigade commanders, we have regimental commanders, which effectively are like brigade commanders. So they just have different names, but it's still kind of the same thing in terms of gameplay. So, you know, this is a regiment I'm moving up right here with a regimental commander. But effectively, it's like a brigade. And I'm going to bring, this is my final regiment, and I'm going to bring those battalions up to kind of start reinforcing the open area in here to bring fire against the church. So as you can see, we're at 800 something points already, just through casualties. You know, we're very close, and a lot of that is the artillery capture, by the way. That's worth a lot. You know, another good reason to go get 16 guns is that they're worth quite a bit of points. So, you know, we're very close to a major victory as it is. We're only about 150 points away, and we haven't even captured the objective. And by the time I did capture the objective, I think I had around 1,200 points or something. You know, we already had enough. So I'm just bringing the cavalry back here, and just get, you know, they're kind of tuckered out at this point. They did their duty well. As you can see, we cleared out all these guns that were up here. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to set up sort of a defensive line over here with the artillery and the cavalry and maybe one of these units here, just because these infantry is moving up here and I don't really know what their intentions are. So I want to be able to basically shut them down if they decide they want to get froggy. Alright, so now the other French battalion on the other side of the church has run off. And here's where I do something dumb. I decide I want to bring multiple sides, you know, multiple angles of fire, and I end up moving this battalion to the third side of the church and basically putting my back to the French that are on the other side of the river. And this unit kind of catches some hell for it. And I don't stay there for long. I quickly realize I'm in trouble and I get them out of there. But that was a mistake, and that was just me being greedy, trying to, you know, surround the fort on all sides, basically. You know, because having played the scenario multiple times, I know you don't always get the objective. But for the video series, I really wanted to get the objective to, you know, for completionist's sake, to you know, for the series. And as you can see, these guys have basically are retreating. They're not routed, but they didn't want any part of that. They were getting shot at in the back from the French across the river there. And you know, I still didn't learn my lesson. I sent another unit over there. It was really dumb. You know, if there's enemy in your, you know, on your rear, you know, right behind you, you know, don't do something like this. This was a dumb move. You know, the fact that I repeated it and made that mistake twice is unforgivable. And you know, with this unit, I kind of end up realizing that it's just not going to happen, and you know, I pull them out of there, and just realize I'm not going to be able to bring fire on that side of the fort. Meanwhile, you can see these two infantry approaching. Before I've had a chance to really get my artillery set up, and before I've had a chance to protect them by getting skirmishers out front. So what we're going to do is advance the cavalry. Even though they're tired and they haven't really had much time to recoup yet, we're going to advance them just to stop this infantry and force them into square and give me time to set up. Look at this. What a dumb move this was. I got infantry right behind me. As you can see, the losses are racking up down here. 18, you know, we're up to 19, 20. You know, I'm just dumb move. Don't do this. you know, this was just me being overly aggressive because I really wanted to capture the objective for the video series. And having played the scenario a bunch of times before, you know, 3/4 of the time I beat it without ever capturing the objective. You know, at least 75% of the time. But for the video series, I really wanted to capture the objective. So I did a couple of dumb things here. And 31 losses now. They haven't inflicted a single casualty. This is just a bad spot. We're not doing any damage. And we're just getting raped. We're up to 38 losses now, 39, 40. We're just getting killed, you know? Just dumb. Why I left them standing there for that long, I don't know. This was certainly not my shining moment of military brilliance. You know, this is just a case of me being overly greedy in terms of trying to get as much fire as I could on any side of the church, but it's just doing no good here. We're getting clobbered, and I finally decide this is worthless. We're taking 15 losses and haven't done anything. On top of that, this unit right here is still, you know, their morale is taking a hit, their fatigue is taking a hit, and they're starting to back up. So I've kind of mismanaged this a little bit, but I recover from it by, this unit is still in good shape, so I'm going to have them take this unit spot, move them over here to recover while this unit kind of takes up their spot. So now they're not getting fired on in the rear. And instead what I'm going to do is try and bring fire from this side of the fort. But there's a unit retreating out of the fort, so I have to shoot them up first. And my cavalry is a little close. We're taking some losses from the square. But since they're in square, let's back them up a little bit, because the square is getting bombed on by the artillery. We're just clobbering them. But I don't have many cavalrymen here, only about 150 men. So, you know, I don't want them to unnecessarily take casualties, so I'm going to pull them back away from the square. And boy, these two units, I really mishandled them. The rest of these units are doing well, though, on the other side of the church here. You know, and it's just a matter of, it's a 30-minute scenario. We're already 20 minutes into it, and I was just trying really, really hard to capture the objective, the church, you know, for the video series. So here comes a French assault column here, and I am not ready for them. I do not have skirmishers in front of my artillery to protect them yet, and we're going to have to rush them out there because this column is closing pretty quickly. My cavalry is not really in great shape at the moment. They haven't really recovered yet from all the guns they took in terms of their fatigue. So I'm really just trying to use them as a scare tactic to just keep, you know, units in square. But this unit here is kind of out of range of the cavalry at the moment, so we're trying to get these skirmishers here to protect my guns from being shot at. Now, luckily they get there, and you know, this artillery is just really close to them, and they're gonna bomb the holy hell out of them. And yeah, not gonna stand there for long with artillery blasting away again. And again, just doing a little false charge here, just to get these guys to run. And I'm not gonna run them down. I don't really have the energy for that at the moment. But just a fake charge, just to get them to break and run. So we have some French, looks like they're running out of the church. And I think we still have a leader and one battalion in there. Just trying to get some better angles here to get more fire on the church. And see if we can get those remaining units out of there. And it looks like they're all running. It looks like all that's left is in there is the leader. Now, if only a leader is inside the church, you can occupy it. You can move infantry in there, and you'll just kill the leader if he's still in there. Take this corner unit by the bridge here. We're going to move them into the church, and we're going to move this unit from the other side of the church into it. So we're getting close to 900 men in there, so very little chance we'll get shot out of it in only a few minutes. So there we go. We're moving these 2 units into the church, and now we have to go and get our division commander, or brigade commander in this case. And as you can see, we already have 1,280 points. We already have enough for a major victory, and we haven't even occupied the objective yet. So as I said, this is one of the few scenarios you can win without capturing the objective. You can actually win it just through combat alone. And it basically comes down to the fact that, most of these Prussian battalions are just really big units that bring a lot of firepower to bear. You can see I really didn't deploy a lot of skirmishers. I really didn't do much charging. I primarily relied upon the fact that most of these units are over 500 men, and I can deploy them into big firing lines and really put a lot of fire out there. So this looks a little better now. We got some skirmishers in front of the cavalry. I'm going to put two battalions on either side of the artillery, and at that point, it's basically setting up my little fortress that you saw in King of Westphalia, and nobody's going to approach that. On top of that, we have some cavalry. So we're at 1,400 points. Still haven't occupied the objective yet. So like I said, if you don't capture the objective in this scenario, you could still beat it. Really use those big Prussian lines to deliver a mass. Most of these French battalions are pretty small. So in a straight gunfight, you're probably going to win. Look, this is a very small unit I'm moving against right here. They're backing up already just at the thought of me coming here. And, we're going to open up on them. Some of my units didn't really do much. They were just, after they drove back the initial French attempt to cross the creek, they just kind of sat there. You really have a lot of forces. This is a pretty good-sized division you get here. And the French units you're up against they just don't match up in terms of firepower, which is one of the reasons that I primarily used that in this scenario. I don't think I did, other than the cavalry charge, I don't think I did like one charge, So we now have possession of the objective. I don't think my leader's actually in the fort. I'm like looking for him. I'm like, where the hell is he? So I finally have to click on go to me, and he's like right by the church without being in it. So sometimes this church is a little, because there's a roof on it, so clicking to get your units into it is sometimes a little tricky, but I think I finally did right there. So now we have possession of the objective. I don't even think this objective is actually worth a lot of points. I think it's worth like 50 points a minute, maybe. It's like, it's cool if you get it. It's like, the final seal of victory, I guess, but the scenario is totally beatable, and I've done it many, many times where I scored enough points through combat without capturing the objective. And it's just because these Prussian lines are just huge. and you have enough of them that you're able to put 2 or 3 of them against a single French unit, and you're just gonna knock them out of the park. So just the kind of huge amount of firepower that these Prussian battalions bring to bear against these relatively small-sized French battalions, really kind of pays dividends. So you don't really need to be too crazy in this scenario. You don't need to, recklessly charge units. You can basically rely on your firepower to, inflict more casualties than the French are able to inflict on you, just because of the vast difference in how many men you have per battalion versus how many men the French have per battalion, which is probably between 200 and 300 men. We have between 500 and 700 men per battalion. So we're just able to put out a lot more fire. It's one of the reasons I didn't use a lot of skirmishers in this scenario. It's just not necessary. You kind of have an overwhelming numbers advantage. The real key to the scenario is using the cavalry to take all the guns, so the French artillery, which is considerable. There were 16 guns up on that hill, 2 8-gun batteries. If we had left them up there, they would have done a hell heck of a lot of damage to us. So the real key is to use your cavalry, and the only reason you need that cavalry is to take that artillery. You don't need them for anything else. So even if you blow them out, taking all those guns, so be it. It's okay, because that's really the only purpose they serve. And then just establishing a good block along this path here with some units, so that none of these French units on the other side of this creek here can really get across and kind of get through you. You're kind of, these battalions along the path here, they're basically acting as like blockers, so that your other battalions can attack the church. And that's kind of the whole idea of the scenario is, use the creek to kind of cut the town in half and stop the French on this side of it up here from getting across and influencing the battle on this side. So these units are going to basically block off that while you attack the church from this side and from the other side, and make sure your cavalry takes the guns. And that's pretty much the gist of the scenario. You just, you have a lot more units than you really need. I could have probably done this with 2 regiments instead of 3. This is, definitely not a hard scenario to win because of the combat advantage you have in terms of just the numbers. Your battalions are just bigger. And the fact that you only need 1,000 points for a major victory means that you're able to kind of get to that without even capturing the objective. And I kind of forced the issue here. I really, really, really tried hard to capture this church, because for the video series I wanted to do that, to kind of get the completionist aspect of the scenario on video. But I've played the scenario many times where I didn't capture the objective, and I still got enough points to win. And so focus on that more. Focus on actually inflicting casualties. I know normally I tell you, objectives are the key to winning the scenarios in this game, and for the most part that's true. This is one of the few scenarios where you can actually do it through combat alone, and the objective is kind of, if you capture it, cool. If you don't, no big deal. Like I said, by the time I captured it, we already had enough points for a major victory. So yeah, the real key is using the big Prussian battalions in line formation to just put out a lot of firepower. Block the creek so that the French can't cross it, and you're able to basically screen your other units so that your other units can attack the church without having to worry about French crossing the river and hitting them in the flank. And on your right side, just make sure you take your cavalry and take all those guns. Um, and then just bring your guns up if those, there are some other French infantry units on, on the right side of where their guns were. And if they get involved, just set your artillery up, put some skirmishers in front, keep your cavalry nearby because you can always, if you want, force those units into square. And yeah, it's basically the gist of the scenario. Um, so that's it for this scenario. In the next scenario, we're going to actually take a look at after the Prussians ejected the Sixth Corps from Plancenoit, which is what we just did here, and captured the town. The French sent in elements of the Young Guard and I think some of the Middle Guard to recapture Plancenoit, and they did. They ejected um, the Prussians that had captured the town, and for a brief time, the reoccupied it before the Prussians finally pushed forward and ejected the French from the town permanently. So in the next scenario, we're going to look at the Young Guard, which is the French attempt to recapture Plancenoit after we just took it in this scenario. And I'll probably do that in a couple of days. So, all right, guys, that's it for this episode, and I will see you next time.